what exactly is an executive order? Not that I've ever been asked that question, but I'm asking you, the viewer, do you know what that is? If we look at the modern sense of the two-word term, it's basically something vaguely that the president will sign, as you see this guy doing. He has signed it, whatever that is on that paper, and then you have to follow orders. I'm going to go through and I'm going to parse the word executive and I'm going to parse the word order. And we're going to try and figure out exactly what those words mean and the particles in the words, try and make some sense out of it to see if the original meaning matches what the modern meaning is. 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. By the way, folks, if I were in that man's shoes, the first executive order I would pass would be a ban on stretchy pants. Looking at an AI overview, which I don't really have a choice in using this, it just pops up on my Google. I did not seek out AI to do this, it just popped up. So we'll use it. An executive order is a directive issued by the President of the United States that manages the operations of the federal government. It's a way for the President to direct the executive branch, manage federal agencies, and implement policy without needing congressional approval. However, they are not legislation and cannot contradict existing laws. Now, in my mind, when I'm thinking, I'm looking at this, and it says they are not legislation. Legislation has that leg word in it, that particle, just as legal has that particle in it, so that hints or implies that executive orders are not legal. Anyways, so it goes into a detailed explanation of it. Let's see some examples. Examples include President Trump's executive order to desegregate the military and President Franklin D. Roosevelt's order that prohibited the hoarding of gold. Which, if you ladies and gentlemen are familiar with his history, where they wanted to implement the fiat currency, the sawbucks we have, the paper the greenbacks we have, and they wanted to get rid of the gold, and they didn't want anybody to have gold. They used the pretense of the war to do that. You know, we need the gold, blah, 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 because we don't have enough of it. So they tried to get everybody's gold, basically. And here we are. If you want to know more about executive orders, you can go to federalregister.gov, and you have a list of them right here. All these pre-simulated dentures right here, I'm sorry, all these presidents right here, you can see what they did. Maybe the JSON means that they saw me coming. I don't know. Anyways, if you want to look at those, you can go there, but that's not what we're concerned with. I could give 2 craps about executive orders. What I'm concerned about is the grammar and what the actual meaning of those particles are. So let's get to that. How many syllables are in the word? We can start there. So 4 syllables. EX, ECU, TIVE. That's how they can credential this. And that's how I probably would have credentialed it in kindergarten. Executive. Executive. 4. Now, this is not a hard and fast rule, folks. Okay, it's not a hard and fast rule. For the majority of the time, this is what we'd use for particles, but a lot of times, as in the case of executive, these particles, the cadence and the way these things are separated by hitting those beats is not reflective of the actual particles in the word. Because there is no word particle TIVE. The particle would be IVE. But I will show that in a minute. So you see here I put this on my Word document, executive order. We're going to look at it. And I'm going to divide up. Matter of fact, I'll do that right now. I'm going to divide it up into the particles I'm going to look at. So we have X, and then EC, and then I'm going to say UT, whoops, UT, and then IBE. Well, okay, we got to do a complete audit of this. So we got to go back and certify the word particles of order. I would say that's 2. Yeah, order. Okay. All of you correct sentence structure students out there of mine that follow my work or look at my work or study my work know that any word that starts with a vowel in front of a consonant, it doesn't matter if it's a vowel in front of one consonant or a vowel in front of two consonants. It's no contract. That vowel in front of that consonant is a particle of negation. And I have shown a continuance of the evidence as to my reasoning as to why that is so. And you can check that out. Hopefully, I will leave a link to that up in that corner, if I remember to do it when I'm uploading this video to YouTube. So let's go. So I notice when a lot of folks look up words, they don't really know how to do it, even though I have made multiple videos showing exactly how I do it. For some reason, folks skip steps or they just don't go far enough. They don't go into the deep waters. But if you're going to be serious about this, folks, you got to go into the deep waters. You got to learn how to swim and go into the deep waters. And if you want someone to be your guide, hey, you're looking at one right here. I'd be more than happy to be your guide. Just contact me at jasonmatthewg17@gmail.com and apply for a workshop. Please include your full correct name. So to start off, at a cursory glance, executive is an adjective. Now just in the back of my mind, I'm looking, I say, oh, in parentheses this is ADJ, which means adjective. That is a hint that the word is tangible contract. If it would say ADV, that's a hint that it could be non-tangible contract. Just depends. So we have 1640s capable of performance, a sense now obsolete. Also, a branch of the government. Okay, yeah, we know that. From Latin, executivus. From past participle stem of exequi, follow after, carry out, accomplish, see execution. Sense of concern with or pertaining to the function of carrying into practical effect. 1670. So that comes out. So we're going forward now. We're going into a place in the continuum that is not relevant to our search. We want to go back. We want to go to the earliest nativity root meaning. So how are we going to do that? Again, most folks would just look at this and be like, oh, well, they're not even dividing it up into syllables. We're not getting particles here. They're just giving us the word. So you got to get a little creative about it. So we keep scrolling down. Execution. Okay, we see N, noun. Again, indicative of tangibility. Same thing, carrying out, putting into effect, blah, 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 accomplishing, execute. So now we're getting into a particle of the word. We're breaking it down to execute now. Instead of executive, it's execute. A sense of putting to death, mid-14th century. That comes before this. Interesting. So now we have execute, verb. Now, verbs kind of lead towards tangibility, but could also be non-tangible depending upon the rest of the evidence. So you got to use rule 1, rule equal, judge mechanics. So execute, carry into effect, late 14th century. So carry into effect comes from the same time period as putting to death. Interesting, interesting. Anyway, so for our purposes, we're coming down here, we see to follow out, to follow to the grave, figuratively, to follow, follow after, accompany, follow up, prosecute, carry out, enforce, execute, accomplish, punish, avenge, from X, out. See, now we're getting into the meat. Seku, follow, from Proto-Indo-European S-E-K-W, to follow. So it is tangible, because the root is tangible. I know what it means to follow. X is a particle of negation, out. Not to mention the E in front of the X is a particle of negation, but E and X together is also a particle of negation. So it means no follow. No follow. Out, no. Now they're saying that these words together mean to follow. Now you notice they didn't give any closure to the IVE or to the TIVE, because we're just looking at this word execute. So what do we have to do? We have to get off our butts and do a little more work. So let's just for fun look up this part. Remember this part? UT? Let's look that up and see what we get for that. Low G, lowest note on the medieval musical scale. Gamut is the low G? That's interesting. I did not know that. You're with me on this now space exploration of this word. UT later replaced by Do for greater sonority. Sonority. The low note on the 6-note musical scale took names from syllables sung to those notes in Latin. Sapphic hymn for St. John the Baptist Day. Ut. The ut being the conjunction that. Oh, wow. Ut is a conjunction that. So we could actually... Oh, wait. Now it's saying it means out. So it goes from meaning a conjunction that to meaning out. Germanic, ooh, oh, here we go. Out, outside. So it's another particle of negation. So that's the conclusion I would come to here, is that it is a particle of negation, and it is a non-tangible contract particle of negation. So that's what happens when you scroll down and do your work. You find things like this out. You find all kind of other information as well, but you got to keep to that thread. Keep to your focus on what you're doing. So it's another out, no. Now how about IVE? What does that mean? One of those words that David-WYNN Miller would call contract words. Because when you see word forming element, when you see pertaining to, tending to, doing, serving to do, then that means it has a contract with whatever it's following. So far we have executive, EX means no, EC means follow, UT means no, IVE means contract. So it's no follow, no contract. Now, let's move on to order. 1200s, body of persons living under a religious discipline. That's the 1200s. From Proto-Italic, Ordian, row, order. Now, you see it's beginning to use itself to give closure to itself. That lends to non-tangibility. Now we have begin to weave. Okay, so that tips the scales onto the tangible side. Proto-Indo-European, a variant of Proto-Indo-European root AR to fit together. Makes sense with the continuance of the evidence, so I would add that to it. Yeah, I would say that's credible. Because again, folks, as the master of your vessel, this fiction etymology dictionary giving you these variables, it's not the authority of what you're doing. You are the authority of what you're doing. You have to make these choices. You have to make these judges' rulings over your court, meaning your dictionary, your meanings, what you want or think a word should mean, that's what you would use in your construct. But keep in mind, this is used as a continuance of the evidence. It's used to put weight. The more evidence you have, you're putting weight on that vessel as a drogue, saying it means this, and that's all it means. Now, of course, you can go and just make stuff up and come up with a completely different meaning that anyone else in the world even knows about. And that's well and fine if you want to do that. But if you want to contract with others, you can't force them to contract with your word that you just made up out of thin air. But if you do this, do your work, invest value in your words, and give a continuance of the evidence, or at least be capable of giving a continuance of the evidence for the meanings that you ascribe to your words, it carries a lot more weight. And when you have the facts, there is no arguing with the facts. So again, the etymology dictionary is not the authority of what you're doing. It's just providing a continuance of the evidence. You are the ultimate authority for what you're doing. Semantically attractive. Nice. Semantically attractive. That's pretty wild. System of parts. Wow, there's a lot of stuff for this. Give order as a verb. All right, so we have 2 syllables here, right? So let's just look up the syllables and see if we can. Forming element. So OR would be a word forming element, but it is not a contract word because it comes at the beginning and it's a vowel in front of a consonant. To split, flay, peel. Like skin, epidermis, things like that. Cleaves, bursts from Sanskrit. To flay, tear, lacerate. Yeah, that's about all we get from that. To split, flay, peel. They're pretty, wow. They're pretty adamant about that. Even tart, to split, flay. How many times have we read that? Holy cow. That's definitely what we're going to put here. So R means no, OR means no, and der means to split, flay. So executive order means no follow, no contract, no split, flay, peel. There you have it, folks. That's what executive order means. No follow, no contract, no split, flay, peel. Now, it's an adjective pronoun because both executive and order are tangible contract. So executive would be a 3 and order would be a 4. Adjective pronoun, which is one of the 5 syntax patterns or scenarios. So now you may ask, well, what would you write in place of that if you wanted to use tangible contract words and write it in correct sentence structure, the words executive order? One way to do that would be to go to a thesaurus. Strongest match is managerial. Now that is tangible contract. There are no particles of negation in it. So if this is something that you want to articulate using correct sentence structure, communication, parsing, syntax, grammar, which I don't know why you would want to do that, because it's just, if you learn the grammar, you'll know why I'm saying what I'm saying, okay? But for knowledge cultivation purposes, we will use the word managerial. Now, how about order? Okay, command. Here's one. Here it is. So managerial authorization is a word you could use. Managerial, actually, that's probably the best one to use that covers all the bases. I mean, you could use permission and mandate, but those aren't as strong as authorization. Managerial authorization, or to just write it out without using the punctuations. There you go. And if you want to use that term in your correct sentence structure contracts for some reason, maybe you're some kind of chief or something, and you want to use that, I want a 10% fee for that, okay? Just say it. Nah, I'm kidding. Use it. Open source. Keep in mind, though, if anyone sees you using that word, managerial authorization, in correct sentence structure, they'll know where it came from. Thanks for watching, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. And, que sera, sera.